FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's July 30th, 2019, reporting from Vancouver, Canada, and wanted to give you an update on the Sprott Resource Investment Conference, which we go to every year. And one of the main reasons why I go to Sprott is I want to get an insight into what the retail investors are feeling about gold, precious metals, mining stocks, as well as the companies. I want to measure their degree of optimism or pessimism. And today, this year at Sprott, it's really interesting. Last year, people were guardedly optimistic, but definitely a bit downcast. The year before, they were very optimistic and probably for naught. That was in 2017, coming right off the 2016 run-up that we experienced in precious metals. But this time is kind of interesting. The retail investors are way more optimistic than the companies appearing there. They're pretty optimistic, but again, they're guardedly optimistic. They've been burned before. They don't want to be burned again, and they're really just kind of observing. They're preparing drill programs, deals that maybe were turned down 6 months ago or not pursued are getting a second hearing. There's a lot more buzz here. The companies are feeling better. You know, obviously $1,400 gold is going to make a big difference in companies' attitudes here, and $16 silver. Right now, as we speak, gold is up $4.30 the ounce to $14.30.40. That's kind of an interesting number. And silver is up 12 cents the ounce to $16.54. That's where it closed on Tuesday. And so it's definitely, the trend is heading higher. Copper is down a bit. A lot of these deals involve copper. Gold is found where and silver is found where oftentimes there's copper. So, but interesting measures. For instance, Rick Rule, I spoke with him. You know, he runs Sprott Global, the brokerage arm of Sprott Resources, and he said that shortly, 6 months ago, they barely had any new customer account activity, hardly any inquiries. He was like the Maytag repairman of the securities business. Nobody cared about the sector, the mining sector. Nobody cared about gold and silver. Silver was coming a little bit back maybe, but certainly nobody could have cared less about silver. Now he's getting 30, 40 requests per day, which is a lot, and it's just the beginning, in my opinion. In addition, he ran an interview with one of our guests that we've had on here quite a bit, and there he got back 400 inquiries from one YouTube interview that ran about 15 minutes that really had an overwhelming response. He said he hadn't seen anything like it since 2011. So we look at it and you have to say that things appear to have turned the course. Hey, you never know. And certainly, I'm not saying go out and invest your whole fortune in this, but look, just like Bitcoin, it's worth putting in 5% of your portfolio, letting them play, although not right now because it had a run up and it's on its way down again. You know, Bitcoin's at that $9,700 mark. It's down from our contest. You know, Mike, promise you, as soon as I get back from Vancouver, the quarters will go out to you. Mike Redlark, he was our winner. He estimated the price at $10,550. Man, what a difference a week makes. That was July 20th. Now, well, it's 10 days. 10 days later, it's down $1,000. It's going in the wrong direction. So the things that I'm looking at in this market, and I've talked to a lot of others, we've had lunch with mining company executives, is the fact that gold prices have gone up while the stock market is going up. And the stock market has pretty much gone up, broke 27,000, new highs in the market, at least in the Dow Jones. In addition, we've got interest rates going lower and gold going higher. Well, that's kind of what you expect. Once your rates turn negative, then there is no cost of owning gold, because if it appreciates a couple percent a year, if you're lucky, that's the cost of inflation devaluing your paper money. So that's a good thing. But the other thing is a really stable dollar. It's around that 97 mark. It's stayed around there. It's gone a little bit higher, a little bit lower. I mean, right now as we speak, dollar's gone up to 98.07, and yet gold has broken out on the, it's broken out as far as what Peter Hugg of Quitco is saying. It broke 1420. That's the last resistance point. Peter Hugg, 1550 by the end of the year. I'm not going to make such a bold forecast, but I do want to emphasize that the psychology of this market has totally changed just by talking to people. Now, it hasn't shown itself yet in the smaller companies, but we have seen a lot of them go up. We've seen Orin, one of our sponsors, go up. We've seen the big ones go up. We've seen the royalty companies, Sandstorm and others, really go way, way up. Mag Silver, which is a perfect analog, just like First Majestic, it's gone up. It's at $12.28 today. It's up 45 cents. It's trading at or near its 52-week high. I should say it's right at its 52-week high. That's a big deal. First Majestic is over $10, not quite trading at its 52-week high yet. Its 52-week high is 1039, and it's at 10. I think it's closed about 1016, 1006 it closed. So we see these silver stocks starting to rebound. A stock that I own by the name of Silver One, and I'm not endorsing them. I do know the CEO, Greg Crow. We're going to be having breakfast together shortly tomorrow. I've been a supporter of that company and a shareholder since the beginning. That one, that company was down. When you look at its 52-week low, it was down to 10 cents. It recently hit a 52-week high of 30.6 cents, and its volume way up. Normal volume in a day, 151,000 shares. Today it did 163,000. But that's the kind of thing that signifies buying strength in the sector. And I look at all of these companies. We're going to be talking to Pat Donnelly over at Trilogy. That one's taken a hit, but understand when we started working with them and getting people to take a look at the company, shortly thereafter, it hit a 52-week high of $3.13. A lot of people dumped it. In addition, they had a warrant execution because they had in-the-money warrants. Haven't heard of that in a long time, have you? So they've got like $1 zillion in cash, and decision time is coming for South 32. So we're looking at just movement in the sector that has been lacking for years and years. And it's kind of one of those things where, okay, the market's up, market just opened now, silver's up a penny. But it's one of those things, we waited for this and waited. Many of you out there gave up hope. To me, always been an insurance policy. It's always good to have a portion of your assets in precious money, in precious metals rather, not precious money, although it is precious to me. And it always makes sense to keep a position through thick or thin. And if you always keep it at 5 or 10%, and then when the price goes down, you up your holdings again so that it's at 5% or 10%, then when it goes up for a while and it becomes 15% or 20, you can, if you feel you're in a position to and it makes sense for you, you can reduce your holdings back to 10%. I mean, it's perfectly logical, perfectly reasonable to do this. And I've seen, just so many people out here, totally different attitude than the way things were before. We talked to Jamie Keach. Jamie's a younger guy, so he's been through less cycles than us older folks out there. But Jamie's extremely astute. His calls on the market have been great. He's a great researcher. He's a mining engineer, really good guy, and really in the know. We have a lot of respect for Jamie. He's a good friend of the show, and he's worth listening to. I really feel that, it's just, you wait long enough and stuff happens, all right? And every dog has its day, not to say gold and silver are dogs, because they're not, but hey, they're going to have their day again. There's no question. All of it changed a few months ago when Trump slapped tariffs on Mexico for failing to cooperate with U.S. immigration goals, or Trump's immigration goals. And you can agree or disagree. It doesn't really matter, let's face it. We all have our opinions. Obviously, borders are something to be concerned about.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
For millennia, ancient pharaohs prospered from unparalleled riches made possible by Egypt's resource-rich gold deposits. But despite this rich history, modern Egypt remains one of the most underdeveloped gold mining countries in the world. But that's all about to change. Aton Resources is leading the charge on the Egyptian mining revival. As the only public exploration company in Egypt, Aton Resources has first-mover advantage. Focused on their 100% owned Abu Marawat concession, Aton Resources is advancing several exploration targets, including the recent discovery of the legendary Lost Mountain of Gold at Rod Ruin. Learn more about this exciting drill program and other news at atonresources.com. Aton trades on the TSXV under the ticker symbol AAN and on the OTC under the ticker ANLBF.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Open borders, probably not the best thing when you've got all these smuggling and cartels and human trafficking drugs. But in any event, whether you agree with what Trump did or not doesn't really matter, because really he did it. And at that point, something happened, and I felt that was a further confirmation precious metals were on their way up. Anyways, we're just going to have to watch this market closely. $1.25 trillion deficits, as far as the eye can see, they'll probably go up to $2 trillion or $3 trillion, who knows? And to think, well, it's only 5% of GDP, I don't think is fairly assessing what it really means. Debt means income inequality. It means diminished standards of living for many of you out there, for many of us. And it's really a difficult situation. And there's no political will to solve this problem as the problem. Nobody really cares until it becomes a matter of national survival urgency. It's just not going to be fixed. And all of you out there realize it. Hey, a couple of comments about President Trump and Baltimore, not to get into racism, non-racism. Baltimore is a rough town. Baltimore has been in a pronounced death spiral for the past 40 years, almost 50 years, since the riots after Martin Luther King was assassinated, the 60s riots. That was a turning point that destroyed many inner cities, many. I can't even begin to tell you how many cities. Newark, New Jersey, Harlem really took a hit. South Bronx took a hit. Philadelphia, Camden, New Jersey. I mean, you can just go down the list of cities. That was a turning point. Detroit, like we said, Chicago, parts of it never recovered. Cleveland, and you go up and down the country, even in Connecticut, they had issues. Trenton, New Jersey. This was really a turning point in the history and the economic cycle of our urban cities, or urban areas, I should say, inner cities. Before that, the schools were better. Most kids were getting educated. You didn't have the explosion in teen pregnancies and births, out of wedlock births. Back then, I think it was the black out-of-wedlock birth rate was somewhere between 15 and 25%, if you could believe it, which was still considered a disaster and very high. Now it's 75%, and it's spread to other minorities, and it's gone up. The white out-of-wedlock birth rate has gone up. All of these things happen. So getting back to Baltimore, it's like many other cities, like parts of Newark, like parts of New York City in the outer boroughs that have not been gentrified. I can think of so many cities that are similar to it, like Bridgeport, Connecticut, parts of that, Hartford, Connecticut, cities in New Haven, Connecticut. Just these smaller, medium-sized cities have just taken it on the chin. They've never recovered. They've been in a spiral. And part of it's white flight, because when the riots happened, many of the people who could leave did, of the whites. And that led to collapse at the schools. There was the forced busing issue. Nobody wanted forced busing but the judges and the progressives. It proved to be a dismal failure, increased white flight, and really lower the quality of education throughout America. And, a whole breakdown of the family, especially minority families, but white families as well. All of that, the rise in the divorce rate to over 50%, all of that started from the 60s. I'm not talking about the political movements of the 60s, just the civil unrest, the threat to society, and then that led to the Great Society, where all those problems were going to be fixed, which further led to the demise of the family. So it's a complicated situation, but the fact is, last year alone, the federal government, I think it was 2018, sent Baltimore, one place or another, $16 billion, and nobody can figure out where this went. Obviously, the corruption is massive, people lining their pockets. Look, the mayor of Baltimore in April, her 7 houses and her office and properties were all raided by the FBI and the feds. She resigned, got this new person, obviously ineffectual. Cities just worked better when there was a boss. When you had the political boss, it just worked better because everyone was accountable to him. All the citizens had to be taken care of. If they weren't, it was going to be problems. And when people came to New York in the 1800s, it was dominated by Tammany Hall, the Irish machine, Boss Tweed, all of these guys. And, it served the local people much better. It was undemocratic for sure, but you can't have democratic one-party rule, meaning not so much Democrats, but you can't have one-party blue rule in all of these cities and expect to have anything different. One-party rule reinforces corruption. It emboldens corruption, and it facilitates corruption. And as long as you've got one-party rule, and I don't care which party it is, you will have massive, massive corruption. So one of the ways you keep corruption out of government is limit the functions. Limit the functions of government, and you will limit the amount of corruption. Limit the amount of tax dollars they can pull in. Limit everything about it. And that doesn't mean just subcontract out the functions to the private sector. We've seen how badly that can work as well and lead to even more corruption. I'm sure a lot of corruption in Baltimore has to do with subcontracted out services, certainly in Detroit, all over the place. But there are certain things that the private sector will always do better than the public. We don't even have to make the case. It's quite obvious. Anyways, it's been another Triple Lutz report. Kerry Lutz signing off.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.